1 week later, I asked my students to look back at their reflections and then to discuss what they saw in the reflections that students had shared about the ESL simulation experience.
Well, I noticed in a lot of the reflections, people mentioning your facial expressions and gestures and the visuals that you used and how it helped everybody. And like everyone mentioned, at least like, one thing that you did in the classroom that made it easier. And that's just nice to have in a classroom to feel comfortable. And
Right.
everyone had mentioned it.
Yeah.
I like how everybody expressed their feelings. Well, it was fun for me, and somebody else said, "Ugh, it was difficult, and that type of thing. So that was cool.
Well, it was kind of different for me than it was for everybody else.
Right.
But like reading everybody else's, I didn't know that not that many people knew that much Spanish. I don't know. I mean, I guess it could be the same with anything though. But it was like a real like eye opener.
Right, something that comes easily for you, it's hard to see other people's struggles sometimes, I think.
Like for her, I read hers, and even in class she was talking about how it wasn't like that for her, and like for her to actually see how things could have been, like I think it would it might have had a big impact on her. And with her going to school to be a teacher, as well as the rest of us, she's able to use that because she knows both sides of it now.
I kind of had the exact opposite reaction of Hadassah's saying that she didn't realize how few people knew Spanish. I was surprised how many people had at least like the minimal Spanish knowledge. I didn't. I have none. So coming in, it was like frustrating because I was like, I don't understand any of this. I don't know what the heck she's saying. I don't know what she wants me to say. And then I guess I just kind of sat there and was quiet for a while and watched you and watched seeing everybody else get engaged with it and they understood it. So I was like, all right, maybe I can do this. I work at a gas station. There's a guy and his wife who come in and they're deaf. And just knowing thank you or stuff like that, they always are just smiling. And granted, they can't really speak back, but just to be able to say thank you. I'm sure if I were in that situation, it would just make my day, make my night. Just that somebody took the time, realizes that you can't communicate the way that they can. Granted, they can read lips and stuff, but just to be able to say thank you.
About how also the child's parents most likely would not speak English either, and so even to communicate with the parents about homework or even about how everything is going in the household, you want to know some words, even Hmong or a lot of Russian students too, and I think it'd be really, I thought that was really, really interesting.
Right.
We all seem to see it as our role and what we can do in the classroom versus expecting all of these outside resources to come in. And I think that that's a really accurate perception of what goes on in the classrooms these days, and that you do have the authority to influence that kind of environment for that child, whether or not there are additional supports provided to you.
Right.
I think we were talking about realizing that each student is an individual and that they come with their own set of background and they know different areas of this language that they're learning, and just working with that and understanding that.
We said we saw added sensitivity, especially when she shared about the student that they put into her classroom that couldn't speak any language. And in our situation, at least you understood English and you didn't slap us on the hand for it. Where if you're in a situation with somebody that doesn't know anything, what do? So we become the learner, maybe drawing from the child and not just the teacher all the time. So it's like a two-way thing going on, and you want to be sensitive enough and learn some things so that you're not inappropriate with that child, because different sects of, ethnic groups speak differently and are culturally trained differently, so it's a very sensitive issue.
Well, at first, I didn't want to say too much, because then I felt like I didn't want to be the one-upper in the conversation. I totally am not that kind of person. So I was waiting back and listening, and then if nobody was answering anything, how people have that silence for 2-3 seconds, and nobody really knows, then I would say something. But I didn't want to always be the one to interject at every part, because it's a learning experience for everybody, and I already know Spanish, so it's kind of more fun for me just to chill out and everybody be speaking Spanish, because I had never been in a classroom like that ever. So it was fun.
I think a natural reaction too, like when you go into an environment where it's completely new, you know, especially if you are a student that usually excels at something and then you're just thrown into something where you struggle, you're usually even more hard on yourself. And so I think that was a big part of us coming in too, is not only like were we nervous and anxious and you try to make us feel comfortable, you also like it's okay if you screw up, you know, like, and I think another thing too is that we were all sitting around kind of waiting to see how much everybody else knew so that we weren't like embarrassed. And I think both things, like, especially if you're thrown into an environment where you're usually a good student to where you're uncomfortable, you're usually hard on yourself and you're usually looking at everybody else to see how much you can get away with and how much risk you can take, you know.
Nice.
And just like, you know, look outside the box and know that each student is different and that where they come from, where they grow up, and you know their home environment is going to be totally different from everything here, and their behavior may be totally different at school than it is at home, and just really get to know them.
I think Diana said that we should come in with not the expectation that everybody's going to know everything. As a teacher, not everybody in your classroom is going to speak English. Not everybody's going to be on the same reading level, and as a teacher we have to acknowledge that and know that we might have to work a little bit harder to get everybody there, but don't expect it to happen all at once.
Teachers coming into the school and expecting, oh, everyone is going to be on the same page, but then the students who aren't, we're going to send them out of the classroom. And so we were kind of talking about how more immersion needs to happen instead of sending out the students who are lower just because they're lower. Like, there should be more integration with the students who are exceeding and the students who are lower and combining it, because the children are going to school to be together, not to be moved into another room to work with a teacher.
That's nice, and it connects actually really to what we'll be hearing on April 20th when we talk about inclusion and special ed.
The teacher has a responsibility to make sure the whole class understands the lesson, not just like the ESL learners, because any topic can be difficult for any student.
The teacher's doing that. It's a combination of things. First, okay, do a reflection. Next, let's have a discussion about it, you know, so you can share with other people what you thought or how you felt. And then not just on paper, but then bring it alive and connect with each other in the classroom, and then take it to the next level. What are you going to do with that information now? You know, so it keeps going on and on and on. So it has meaning, like we were talking about with the ESL learner. They need to have meaning. This isn't just, you know, I show up, you teach me a couple of words, and I leave. How am I going to apply this? How can it help me live out my daily life and become, you know, bigger and get bigger all the time?
So what do you think what were my explicit or implicit instructional objectives for last week and today?
Like helping us realize that there are different learners. Like, not all of us knew Spanish that well, so it was like we were realizing that there are different levels that people are at. So.
You will conduct activities after our floor discussion, like when we had to write about the monsters, and we had to incorporate all the words that we had learned and all the colors that we had learned and make up a name for a monster, and that's like an activity of making up a character, writing about the character, telling characteristics about the character, what naming it, and all that. That is a part of the lesson. Like that was an activity for the discussion of the year.
I will value a positive learning environment in such a way that will promote my students' value for a positive learning environment in their classrooms as well.
Nice.